Welcome back to the deep dive. I want to start today with a feeling that I think we've probably all had at some point.
That little glitch in the system feeling?
Exactly. You know that moment, maybe you're stuck in traffic or you're staring at a spreadsheet at 3 in the afternoon, or maybe you're just looking down at your own hand and suddenly everything feels a little bit fake.
The Truman Show moment. The sense that the world is a set and you've just seen the edge of it.
Yes. And you look at everything and you think, is this really it? Is this what reality actually is? Just a collection of hard, dead stuff that I'm moving around until I stop moving?
It's a profound sense of alienation from the physical world. I've heard it called the Lego block existential crisis.
The Lego block crisis. I love that. It's perfect. We're taught from grade school that reality is a warehouse.
Right.
It's just stocked with atoms, stars, coffee cups, steering wheels, and us. And we're all just distinct, separate objects bumping into each other in a void.
That's a very bleak, but a very, very standard view of physics. It's what philosophers call static metaphysics. It's been the default setting for Western thought for, 2,000 years?
At least. But today, we're looking at a stack of documents that basically grabs us by the shoulders and says, you are looking at it completely upside down.
A total inversion.
We're doing a deep dive into something called generative ontology, and this is primarily based on the work of Philip Lillian at the Unified Coherence Institute.
And it's crucial to point out, this isn't just a philosophy seminar. Lillian is a physicist. He's a mathematician. He is coming at this with hard logic, with equations.
That's the part that really gets you. He's using things like combinatorics, set theory, and topology to argue that objects, the very things we think are real, are actually illusions.
Or at least they aren't the main event.
Right. He argues that we have been obsessed with being, with the nouns, the things, when the universe, he says, actually only cares about becoming. It only cares about the verbs, the processes.
That is the fundamental shift right there. The move from the object to the process. From the noun to the verb.
So if Lillian is right, I'm not a thing sitting in a chair right now recording this. I am a standing wave in a field of infinite potential.
It sounds like poetry, doesn't it? But what's so fascinating about these papers, specifically Generative Ontology V1 and the coherence-based emergence of reality, is that he's not trying to write poetry.
Not at all.
He is trying to write a theory of everything, a framework that attempts to finally bridge the gap between abstract mathematics, physical matter, and subjective consciousness.
And he does it with a single line that, I'm not kidding, it stopped me in my tracks when I read the introduction. He writes, becoming is the ground. Being is the residue.
Being is the residue.
Think about that. Being, the stuff, the matter, the atoms that make up this table and our bodies, is just the leftover ash when the process slows down.
It completely flips the board. Usually we think the stuff is the reality and the change is just something that happens to the stuff.
Right. Change is secondary.
Lillian says no.
Yeah.
The change, the flow, the coherence, the process, that is the reality. The stuff is just where the flow got temporarily stuck. It's a traffic jam in the process of becoming.
So before we get into the math, and fair warning to you listening, we are going to talk about equations that supposedly birth the entire universe from absolute nothing. We really need to nail down this warehouse problem. Why is that old view of atoms and void broken? Why do we even need a new theory?
Well, let's stick with that warehouse view for a second. If the universe is really made of eternal static blocks, call them atoms, quark strings, whatever you want, how do you explain newness?
You mean like where does a new idea come from, or how does a new species evolve?
Exactly. If reality is fundamentally static being, if it's just a cosmic box of Legos, then everything is already here. You're just shuffling the deck chairs on the Titanic.
You can rearrange the atoms to make a dinosaur or rearrange them to make a chicken, but you haven't actually created anything fundamentally new.
You've just moved the inventory around the warehouse. It's a closed system. There's no room for genuine emergence.
But our experience tells us we don't live in a closed loop. We live in a world of constant creation.
Constant creation, evolution, thought, the birth of stars, the emergence of life and consciousness itself. A static universe has a really, really hard time explaining the genesis of things.
It can list what exists, but it can't explain how it got started in the first place.
It can count the inventory, but it has no idea how the factory works.
Precisely. And that is where Lillian comes in with this term ontogenesis.
Right.
Ontology, the study of what is. Ontogenesis, the study of how reality emerges.
It's the physics of how. How does something come from nothing? How does order emerge from chaos? How does the universe become?
Okay, let's talk about the water and ice analogy, because I think this is probably the best way to visualize what Lillian is getting at here.
It's the core metaphor of the whole theory, really. Imagine a river. The water is constantly moving, it's swirling, it's flowing.
It's pure process.
Pure process. That flow is becoming. It's dynamic, it has energy, it is never in the exact same state twice. That, he says, is the fundamental nature of the universe, a field of flowing what he calls coherence.
Okay, so the universe is a river.
Now imagine the temperature drops. A section of that river freezes solid. It crystallizes into a block of ice.
The ice is a thing, an object.
The ice is a being. It's static. You can pick it up, you can measure its dimensions, you can weigh it. Science, for the last few centuries, has been absolutely obsessed with studying the ice.
We measure the ice, we name the ice, we smash the ice with particle accelerators to see what smaller bits of ice are inside.
And in doing so, we completely ignore the water that made it. We treat the ice as if it's the fundamental reality, forgetting that it's just a temporary phase change of the underlying flow.
So in Lillian's view, particles, matter, planets, even our own bodies, we are all just the ice.
We are the temporary stabilization of a deeper flowing process. We are the residue.
We are studying the residue and completely missing the engine. Okay, then let's get into the engine room. If we aren't starting with atoms, if we're not starting with the ice, what is the water? What is the primal stuff of the universe? Lillian uses this term Zeta Naught. It's written as Z$.
$. This is what he calls absolute coherence, the zero state.
Now, my brain immediately goes to empty space. You know, the void between galaxies. A vacuum.
And that's the trap we have to avoid. Deep space is still very much something. A vacuum in modern physics is actually a beehive of activity.
Right, it's not truly empty.
Not at all. It has distance, it has dimensions up, down, left, right, it has quantum fluctuations, particles popping in and out of existence, it has physical fields running through it.
So a vacuum is like an empty stage, but the stage itself is still there. The dimensions, the laws of physics, they're all built in.
Right. $. Before the stage is built. It is a coherence vacuum. It is the pre-structural substrate before even mathematics or physics exist. It is pure unstructured potential.
It's the blank page before the writer even picks up the pen.
It's the capacity for something to happen without anything actually happening yet. It's the silence from which music can emerge.
Okay, but here's the problem that always breaks my brain with these kinds of theories. How do you get from potential to actual?
The primordial question.
How do you get from a perfectly blank page to the number 1? Because if $1 is truly absolutely nothing with no rules and no structure, it should just stay nothing forever. Nothing comes from nothing, right?
This is the problem of origins. And this brings us to what might be the most audacious part of the theory, the seed equations.
Yes, the math.
The math that creates reality.
And I have to be honest, when I first saw the first equation in the paper, my first thought was that it had to be a typo.
I think I know which one you mean. A bit of a shock to the system.
Seed equation 1, the genesis of unity. And the equation is del(all) equals $1. A 0 to the power of 0 equals 1.
It looks wrong, doesn't it? It feels like it should be 0.
It feels fundamentally wrong. I have this vivid memory of my high school calculus teacher, Mrs. Gable. She was very strict. And she explicitly told our class that 0 to the power of 0 is undefined. She said if you try to calculate it, the whole system of math breaks.
And you know what? Mrs. Gable was right. But only in the context of calculus.
Okay, defend Mrs. Gable's honor here. What does that mean?
In calculus, you're dealing with continuous functions and limits. You're asking what happens as a function approaches 0 to the power of another function that's also approaching 0.
Right, the limits.
And depending on how fast each part approaches 0, the answer could be anything. It could be 0, it could be 1, it could be infinity. It's a race to 0 and you don't know who wins. So calculus wisely says indeterminate. It gives up, it can't answer.
So how is Lillian allowed to just ignore that and say it equals 1?
Because he isn't using calculus, he's using different branches of mathematics, discrete mathematics, combinatorics, and set theory. And in those fields, $. Is almost universally defined as 1. It's a convention, but it's a necessary one.
Explain that. How can 0 things, arranged 0 ways, somehow equal 1?
Let's think about it in terms of mapping, which is what exponents do in set theory. An exponent, say $a to the power of $, is asking, how many distinct ways can I map the elements of set B onto the elements of set A?
Okay, so if I have 2 letters and 3 mailboxes, that's a mapping problem.
Right. But now let's use the zeros. $10 is asking, how many ways can I map an empty set onto another empty set?
I mean, there's nothing to map, and there's nowhere to put it, so 0 ways.
But that's the trick. There's exactly one way to do that.
Which
to do nothing.
Okay, that sounds like a semantic trick. The only way to do it is to not do it.
It sounds like a trick, but logically, it's incredibly profound. The act of doing nothing is a singular defined state. It's a specific function. It is not chaos. It is not random. It is a specific, unique relationship between nothing and nothing.
Okay, I think I'm starting to get it. There is only one way to have a completely empty room. You just leave it empty. That is one specific state.
Correct. Now let's translate that from abstract math into ontology, into the physics of reality. Lillian assigns meaning to each part of the equation.
Let's hear it.
The base 0 represents the void. The null field, or $0, the exponent 0 represents an operation. In math, exponents are often linked to recursion or self-reflection.
Okay, so you have the void acting upon itself.
The void reflecting on the void. The nothingness becoming aware of itself as nothingness.
Okay, this is starting to click in a big way.
Yeah.
If you have absolute, undifferentiated nothingness, the moment it can notice itself.
Then you don't just have nothing anymore. You have the concept of nothing. You've created a feedback loop. A distinction has been made.
I am nothing. That statement is a something.
That self-referential loop, that simple act of reflection, creates a stable point. It crystallizes. It stabilizes into unity. It becomes the number one.
So identity, the very concept of one, of a single thing, isn't something that was just lying around in the cosmic warehouse from the beginning.
It was generated. It was the first spark in the dark. Identity is not given. It is generated by the universe's innate capacity for self-reflection. This equation, $10 in each one, is the mathematical Big Bang.
That is absolutely wild. It frames the birth of the universe not as a physical explosion, but as an act of self-awareness.
It's an act of information creating itself, and that's a very specific intuition you're having. Hold on to that thought, because we're going to see that this math is actually just a formal description of how consciousness works.
Okay, so we have a spark. The T in dollars, we have a tiny conceptual point of 1 in the infinite darkness. But a spark isn't the universe. Sparks go out. How do you keep this first 1 from just vanishing back into the 0 it came from?
You need a background. You need a stable canvas that can hold the spark. And this leads directly to seed equation 2, the arrangement of nothing.
And the equation for that is $0, exalt $1. 0 factorial equals 1.
Right. And again, it looks a little strange at first.
Okay, so remind us what a factorial is.
A factorial is written with an exclamation point. Like, say, $3 a dollar. It means you multiply $3 times 2 times 81, which equals 6. It tells you how many unique ways you can arrange a set of items.
If you have 3 books, there's 6 different ways you can arrange them on a shelf.
Exactly. So $0 is asking the question, how many ways can I arrange 0 books on a shelf?
And just like before, the answer is 1.
By leaving the shelf empty.
Okay, that makes sense mathematically.
Yeah.
But what's the ontological meaning? What does this do for reality?
This represents invariance. It's a statement about the nature of the void. It means that nothingness is not unstable chaos. It's not a turbulent sea. It has a perfect, singular, unchanging order. It is reliable.
It's a stable background.
It's a stable background. Lillian gives this property a name. Hypergravity.
Hypergravity. That sounds like a weapon from a science fiction movie.
Yeah, it does. But he doesn't mean physical gravity, not yet. He means ontological gravity. It's the anchor for all of existence. It's the fundamental rule that says the background of reality is stable and coherent. This $0 creates the stable canvas that allows the $100 spark to exist without just dissolving back into randomness.
So we have the spark and we have the canvas.
Yeah.
But why doesn't that spark just sit there forever as a single lonely one? Or why doesn't it just explode into a billion random things? How does it build?
That's the third critical piece of the engine. Seed equation 3, the coherence genesis invariant, or the CGI. And the equation is written as 0 to the 0.
Right, to the 0.
Yeah,
raised to the power of infinity.
Right. It's saying if you take that first spark of unity, that first act of self-reflection, and you repeat it infinitely.
Like an echo that goes on forever.
Exactly. If you echo that self-reflection forever, it doesn't degrade, it doesn't dissolve into chaos or grow into something else. It remains perfectly stably 1.
Because 1 times 1 times 1 times 1 is always just 1.
It's eternally stable. This creates a stable, infinite identity. This is what explains why the universe holds together. It creates a self-sustaining coherence field. So the whole engine of reality, in its simplest form, is
1, the spark. To the canvas, $0.
And 3, the infinite sustain.
In 50 so.
It's just amazing to think of mathematics not as a tool for counting apples, but as a literal description of the birth of existence. It feels like we are looking at the universe's source code.
That's a great way to put it. And once you have the source code running, you need operators to actually execute the program.
Yeah.
Because right now, all we have is a stable, unified field of one. We don't have things. We don't have diversity. We don't have a universe.
Right, we have a single perfect hum, but we don't have a symphony yet.
Exactly. How do we get from one to many? How do we get from a perfectly unified field to, well, to you and me sitting here having this conversation?
This is where the source material introduces these operators. And they have some very technical names, but I want to break them down into what they actually do. We have the SEO and the ARO. The symmetry coherence operator, SEO, and the asymmetry resonance operator, ARO.
Okay, let's start with the SEO. What is its job in the universe?
The SEO is the force of unity. It's the unifying principle. And Lillian explicitly associates it with consciousness.
Consciousness itself.
Yes. The job of the SEO is to enhance coherence. It wants to restore symmetry. It's the force that pulls everything together, that seeks to find the connections between things.
Okay, give me an example of that.
Think about your own mind right now. You are constantly taking in millions of bits of raw data. The light in the room, the sound of my voice, the temperature of the air, your own memories, and the SEO, your consciousness, is binding all of that into one single coherent experience.
Right. I don't see a million separate pixels. I see a picture. I don't feel left toe sensation and right ear sound as two separate universes. I feel them both as me.
That is the SEO at work. It integrates, it synthesizes, it seeks to return everything to that $Z state of perfect, harmonious oneness.
But wait. If the SEO's whole job is to pull everything back into one, if it won completely, wouldn't everything just melt back into a formless blob?
Yes, that's the logical conclusion. If the SEO was the only operator in the universe, existence would collapse back into the void. It would be a peaceful, perfect, undifferentiated nothingness, the ultimate unity.
So we need a counterforce.
Yeah.
A villain, or at least an antagonist in this cosmic story.
And that's where the ARO comes in, the asymmetry resonance operator. And this is the force associated with observation.
Now hold on. My brain usually lumps consciousness and observation together. If I observe you, I am conscious of you, right?
In our everyday language, yes.
Yeah.
But Lillian makes a critical, and I mean crucial, distinction here.
Let's hear it.
Consciousness, the SEO, unifies. Observation, the ARO, divides. They are opposing forces.
Unpack that. How does the act of observing something divide it?
Let's go to the most famous example in all of physics, the double slit experiment. Before you look at the electron, what is it?
It's a wave of probability. It's a smear that goes through both slits at once. It's everywhere and nowhere.
It is a coherent whole. It exists in a state of pure potential. But the moment you place a detector there, the moment you observe it, to see which slit it goes through, what happens?
It collapses. It picks a spot. It becomes a definite particle in a definite location.
Exactly. The act of observation forces a choice. It says, you are here and not there. It draws a boundary. It creates a distinction where there was none before. The ARO is the scalpel of reality. It cuts the infinite whole into specific, finite parts.
So observation is what creates the many out of the one. It's what makes the ice freeze out of the water.
Yes. Without the ARO, there would be no distinct objects at all. There would be no you or me. There would only be us in a cosmic soup. But without the SEO, there would be no connection between those objects, just a chaos of disconnected points.
So reality, this whole messy, beautiful, complicated drama of life, is just the friction between these two fundamental forces.
That's the idea.
One force is trying to hug everything into a single ball of light, and the other is trying to chop everything into little distinct cubes.
And the universe as we know it exists in that tension. That's what he calls the meta-operator, the dynamic, ongoing dance between unity and division, between consciousness and observation.
Man, that is such a cool framework. It creates a really interesting way to understand, well, almost everything. Like why we as humans feel so torn between the deep desire to belong to a group, unity, and the equally deep desire to be a special individual, division.
It's the fundamental heartbeat of existence.
Yeah.
Expand and contract, bind and separate, inhale and exhale.
Okay, so we have the engine, which is the seed equations, and we have the drivers, the operators. Now I want to talk about the output. What does this engine actually produce? Let's talk about the music.
Yeah, yes.
Because there's a section in here called Math as Resonance that completely, and I mean completely, changed how I look at numbers.
This is one of my favorite parts of Lillian's work. It reframes the very purpose of what mathematics is.
Yeah. Usually you hear physicists, especially string theorists, talk about math as if it's the fundamental building block of reality. Like if you could zoom in far enough on an atom, you'd eventually find a tiny number 4 floating there.
The matrix code view of the universe, the idea that the world is math.
Right. But Lillian says no. He says all is coherence, mathematics is its resonance.
Let's use an analogy. Think of a violin string. The string itself. That is the coherence field. That is the fundamental reality.
Okay, the string is the water.
Now, you pluck the string, it vibrates, it makes a sound. That sound, the pitch, the frequency, the specific note it plays, that is mathematics.
So math isn't the string itself. Math is the song that the string is capable of singing.
Exactly. Math describes the behavior of the field, but it is not the field itself. It's the sheet music of reality, not the orchestra.
And this finally explains why certain numbers seem to be baked into the fabric of the cosmos. We always wonder, why is the golden ratio in pine cones and spiral galaxies? Why is the number in population growth and finance?
Lillian calls these resonance invariants, or more poetically, he calls them attractors.
Attractors.
Think of them as the comfortable grooves in the universe. When the coherence field vibrates, it doesn't just vibrate randomly. It naturally settles into specific, stable frequencies. Just like a guitar string doesn't make every possible sound, it has natural harmonics, specific notes it likes to play.
So these famous numbers are the universe's favorite notes.
They are the natural harmonics of the coherence field.
Okay, let's run through the playlist. He calls it the Transcendental Resonance Index. Let's look at the sheet music, starting with the most famous one, pi.
Pi, he says, is the curvature resonance modulus.
What does that mean?
It means that whenever the coherence field tries to curve back on itself, whenever the SEO, the force of unity, tries to create a perfect symmetry or a closed loop, the field naturally vibrates at a frequency of 3.14159.
So pi isn't just a random number that circles happen to have. Pi is the literal sound of the universe bending back on itself.
It is the fundamental resonance of cycles. Anything that repeats, anything that spins, anything that closes a loop will sing the song of pi.
Okay, what's next? Euler's number, A.
A is the resonance of growth. Whenever you have a system that is growing continuously, not in discrete steps, but smoothly and constantly, like compound interest, or a bacterial colony or radioactive decay, you find the number 8.
2.718.
Lillian says Euler's is the limit of coherence expanding recursively. It's the sound the universe makes when it is either exploding outward or growing inward in a self-referential way.
And then there's the big one for artists and nature lovers. Phi, the golden ratio, 1.618.
The fractal harmony modulus. Now this one is special. It's defined by its own recursion. Phi is equal to $1 plus 1 phi. It refers to itself.
So it's a perfect feedback loop.
And because of that, phi is the frequency that allows the part to look exactly like the whole. It allows for perfect self-similarity.
Which is why we see it everywhere in nature.
Yes. A spiral galaxy looks like a hurricane, which looks like a nautilus shell, which looks like the swirl of hair on a baby's head. The golden ratio is the only frequency that allows for perfect, efficient nesting of information.
It's the universe's own zip file algorithm.
It's the resonance of embedding and harmony. And finally, there's a simpler one he includes, the square root of 2.
The diagonal of a perfect square.
He calls it the first irrational bifurcation. Imagine a world made of a perfect grid of ones. A simple, rational world. The diagonal of a square with sides of length 1 is the square root of 2. It's an irrational number. It doesn't fit in the grid. It breaks the simple pattern.
It's the first step into complexity.
It represents the birth of dimensionality. It's the moment unity splits and creates space. It's the sound of the 1 becoming the 2.
So these fundamental numbers, they're like the root, the third, the fifth, and the seventh. They're the fundamental chord progression of reality.
They are the fundamental notes. Pi circles, 2 von Renests, and the square root of 2 extends. And everything you see from a star to a thought is just a vast, complex jazz improvisation built on those 4 simple notes.
I love that. The jazz improvisation of reality. Okay, so we're moving from the abstract math to the stuff we can actually touch, to physics. Because eventually, this music has to freeze into ice. This resonance has to become an electron or a rock or a person listening to this right now. How do we get from abstract resonance to mass?
This brings us to what he calls harmonic resonance algebra, or HRA. In the standard model of physics, we think of fundamental particles as point masses, little distinct balls of stuff.
Like microscopic billiard balls zipping around.
Right. But in Lillian's generative ontology, particles, things like electrons and quarks, the fermions, they are not things at all. They are resonance nodes.
Nodes? You mean like the points on a vibrating guitar string that don't move?
That is the perfect analogy. Go back to that string. When it vibrates, there are points that move a lot, the antinodes, and there are points that stand perfectly still, the nodes. The wave locks into place at those points.
So an electron isn't a thing. It is a location where the coherence field has locked itself into a stable, standing wave.
It's a knot in the field, a self-sustaining pattern, a tracked echo that holds its shape.
And Lillian has this incredible line about this. He says, mass is nodal memory.
Mass is nodal memory.
Break that down for us. What does that mean?
Mass, what we perceive as solidness or inertia, is just the persistence of that knot. It's the field's memory of that specific resonance. It's the refusal of that standing wave to dissipate back into the flow.
The universe is playing a note. As long as the musician holds that note, the particle exists. If the music stops, the particle vanishes.
This circles right back to the ice analogy. The particle is the ice, but the resonance is the cold temperature, the process that's keeping it frozen.
So if particles are the nodes, what are the forces between them? What's gravity? What's electromagnetism?
Those forces, the bosons, are the harmonic chords. They are the patterns of resonance that connect the nodes.
So gravity isn't some magical force pulling things together.
It's a coherence gradient. Things fall toward each other because their resonance patterns are trying to merge. They're trying to find a more stable, unified harmony. They are trying to return to unity. It's the SEO in action.
That is beautiful. Gravity is just the universe trying to hug itself.
In a way, yes. Gravity is the physical manifestation of the SEO's fundamental desire for oneness.
Now, this leads to a really, really trippy idea in the paper about identity. Because if I'm not a solid thing, if everything is just a wave and waves are constantly changing, then what am I?
Right.
I feel like the same person I was yesterday.
Right.
But physically, I know I'm different. My cells have turned over. My thoughts are different. My position in space is different.
It's the classic ship of Theseus paradox. If you replace every single plank in a wooden ship over time, is it still the same ship at the end?
Exactly. What is the me that persists?
Lillian solves this with the concept of strange attractors.
I've heard this term from chaos theory. It's connected to things like the butterfly effect, right?
Right. A strange attractor is a pattern that a dynamic system tends to follow. The classic visual is the Lorentz attractor, which looks a bit like a butterfly's wings. If you trace the path of the system, it swirls and loops around 2 points, but it never traces the exact same path twice.
So it has a stable overall shape, but the moment-to-moment movement within it is chaotic and unpredictable.
Exactly. And Lillian says identity is strange attractor. You are not a static object. You are a pattern.
I'm a pattern.
You are a stable swirl in the coherence field. You are constantly swirling around a conceptual center you call yourself. You are never the exact same you 2 seconds in a row. You are always evolving, always becoming, but you always stay within the recognizable shape of you.
That is actually a really comforting thought. I'm not a fixed object that's slowly decaying and falling apart. I'm a dynamic pattern that's constantly evolving and renewing itself.
You are a stable resonance in the infinite flow of becoming. As long as the attractor holds its shape, you persist.
Okay, we've done the math, we've done the physics, but there is one enormous piece of the puzzle left. The piece that most physical theories just ignore or pretend doesn't exist.
The elephant in the room of science.
The experience, the feeling of it all, the subjective reality. Lillian has a name for this too. He calls it qualionomics.
Qualionomics.
Yeah.
The economics or the dynamics of qualia.
And qualia is the philosophical term for subjective experience, right? The redness of a rose,
Yeah.
the taste of coffee, the feeling of being sad.
The what it's like to be something.
This is the famous hard problem of consciousness. Science can explain the wavelength of red light, which is about 700 nanometers. It could explain which neurons are firing in my visual cortex when I see it, but it has absolutely no explanation for why it looks red to me.
Exactly. Standard physics has no room for experience. In that model, you're just a computer processing data. There's no reason it should feel like anything.
But Lillian's framework integrates it perfectly. He brings it in through the observer field.
Remember the ARO, the asymmetry resonance operator, the force associated with observation that divides.
Yes, the one that collapses the wave function.
Lillian argues that perception is not a passive act. Your eyes are not just cameras recording data that's already out there. Perception is a generative act.
We create what we see. That sounds a little extreme.
Not that you create it from scratch, but that you participate in its creation. The coherence field, in its raw state, is infinite potential. It's the $$ store state. It contains infinite ways it could be.
The wave function of the entire universe.
By observing it, you act as a filter. You force a choice. You collapse that infinite potential into one specific, concrete experience. Lillian calls this unity collapse.
So I am actively taking the infinite, shimmering chaos of the universe and collapsing it into the finite movie I call my life.
You are editing the raw footage of reality in real time. And this leads to a very profound idea about what knowledge is. He has another one of those killer lines here. He writes, "We do not know something by copying it. We know it by entering harmonic resonance with it."
We know it by entering harmonic resonance with it.
This is what he calls epistemic resonance.
Okay, what does that mean?
Usually we think of learning like downloading a file into a computer. I take a fact from a book and I store it as data in my brain.
The warehouse model of knowledge?
Lillian says no. Knowledge isn't data storage. It is phase tuning.
Like tuning a radio to the right station.
Or like bringing two tuning forks together. If I have a fork tuned to the note C and I strike it, it starts vibrating. If I then bring another C-tuned fork close to it, what happens?
The second one starts vibrating too, without ever being touched.
They know each other because they are resonating at the same frequency. They are in phase.
That explains the aha moment.
Yes, absolutely.
You know that feeling when you're struggling with a really complex idea? Maybe even some of the stuff in this very deep dive, and you're confused, and then suddenly click.
The tumblers fall into place.
Yes, it all creates a coherent picture. It physically feels like a lock snapping shut in your mind.
That, Lillian would say, is a literal resonance event. Your internal coherence field has finally phase-locked with the coherence pattern of the concept itself. You aren't just holding the data anymore. You have become the data. You are vibrating at the frequency of the truth.
That is so much more satisfying than thinking of my brain as just a meat computer processing ones and zeros. It feels more true to the experience.
It connects the knower with the known. You aren't a separate observer looking at an external universe you are studying. You are part of that universe, and understanding it means resonating with it.
When you truly understand something, you and that thing become, just for a moment, a single, unified, coherent system. The SEO wins for a second.
The perfect moment of unity.
We have covered a massive amount of ground here. My brain is definitely resonating. Or maybe it's just vibrating from the sheer density of these ideas.
It's a full cosmology. It starts at zero and ends with you.
Let's try to bring this all home. What is the big so what here? Why does this massive philosophical and physical shift from being to becoming actually matter to the person listening to this while they fold laundry or drive to work?
I think it matters because of agency. It changes your relationship with reality. If you view yourself as a static being, as an object, as a piece of ice,
right,
then you are fundamentally fragile.
Objects break, objects decay, objects are isolated and separate from everything else.
And you are ultimately a victim of entropy, a machine that is slowly rusting, as you said earlier.
Right.
But if you are becoming, if you are a resonance node in a universal coherence field, then you are a process. You are continuous with the entire universe. You are dynamic. You can change your pattern. And most importantly, you are an operator.
An operator, not just a participant.
Remember, you possess both the SEO, consciousness, the unifier, and the ARO, observation, the divider. You are not just passively watching the movie of your life, you are the projector. By choosing what you pay attention to and how you integrate it into your sense of self, you are actively collapsing the infinite field of potential into your experienced reality.
So the final synthesis here is that physics, math, and consciousness are not three different departments in a university that never talk to each other.
No, they are not separate disciplines at all. They're just different ways of describing the exact same thing, the universal flow of coherence.
So physics is the structure of the flow.
Math is the language of the flow.
And consciousness is the experience of the flow.
They're all the same water. We've just given different names to the river, the current, and the feeling of being wet.
I want to leave our listeners with a final provocative thought that builds directly on all of this.
Let's hear it.
If reality is becoming, and if I'm a resonance node, then my internal state, my thoughts, my feelings, my focus, my beliefs, that is my frequency.
Yes, that is your broadcast signal into the field.
So what happens if I change my frequency? If I intentionally tune my personal resonance to something like generosity or curiosity, instead of letting it sit on the default frequency of fear or annoyance,
Yeah.
do I physically change what collapses out of the Zeta field around me?
Lillian's physics would suggest.
Absolutely, yes. You act as a different kind of strange attractor. You pull a different set of probabilities out of the chaos. You literally begin to generate a different world for yourself.
That is something to chew on. We are not just living in the universe, we are actively generating it.
Moment by moment.
Through our own coherence.
Through the physics of becoming.
Thank you for guiding us through the coherence field today. This was incredibly dense, but absolutely mind-bending.
It was a pleasure to resonate with you on this.
And to everyone listening, check your frequency. You might just be building the road you're driving on. We'll see you in the next deep dive.